It's been 5 years since the United Kingdom left the European Union, a moment marked by celebrations and cheers from some, and commiserations and tears from others. A lot has happened since then, a pandemic and a war in Europe, to name a few. But through all this, the British people have continued to consider the eternal question: was it the right decision? New polling released to mark the 5-year anniversary suggests that fewer people than ever think that the UK was right to vote to leave. So in this video, we're going to dive into the newly released data, explain why Brexit regret is increasingly common, look at what was promised versus what was delivered, and try and work out if anything will actually change as a result. If you want more UK political drama from us, check out our podcast Starmageddon, where we track the successes and failures of this new Labour government. Find it over on the TLDR Podcast's YouTube channel or in your favourite podcast app. According to YouGov's January 2025 data, just 30% of Britons right now say that the UK was right to vote to leave the EU, compared to 55% who say it was wrong. That's the lowest proportion ever in YouGov's polling saying that the UK was right to vote for Brexit. If you break that data down by referendum voter type, unsurprisingly, 88% of 2016 Remain voters view the country's vote for Brexit as wrong, whereas a smaller number of Leave voters, 66%, view it as the right decision, meaning a sizable 1 in 6 Leave voters think that it was wrong. Against this backdrop of dissatisfaction in hindsight with the Brexit vote, polling by Redfield and Wilton last month found that, excluding don't knows, 57% would vote to rejoin the EU, while 43% would vote to stay out. According to Professor John Curtice, that is a very similar result to both the average figure in other recent polls and with the picture for over 2 years. So what is behind all this? Well, at least part of it can be attributed to the slightly morbid reality of demographic churn. Older people were more likely to back Brexit than younger people in 2016. Some of those Leave voters will have died in the 9 years since, while those who were too young to vote have now joined the electorate. According to Redfield and Wilton, today 60% of 18 to 24-year-olds, none of whom were old enough to vote in 2016, would vote to rejoin. But putting age aside, the simple fact is that people, including Leave voters, think Brexit has gone badly. YouGov found that only 11% of Britons think Brexit has been more of a success, while 62% think it has been more of a failure. Most notable is that only 22% of Leave voters think that Brexit has been more of a success, compared to 32% viewing it as more of a failure. The public's view of Brexit as a failure is even more stark when you break it down by topic. Another YouGov survey from last month showed that few Britons think Brexit has been good for anything. The famous Take Back Control message seems to be the only area that Britons assess Brexit as being more positive, with 31% of the public believing that Brexit has had a positive impact for the control that the UK has over its own laws, although that's still smaller than the 35% who say there's been no impact. The only other mildly well-assessed area, with 23% saying there was a positive impact, is the UK's ability to respond to the COVID-19 pandemic. And even then, that's still a smaller share than the 30% who think it was negatively impacted by Brexit, or the 32% who saw no impact. What's most damning is that no more than 11% of Britons believe Brexit has been beneficial to the 16 other issues surveyed. Let's look at some of these more closely. If we look at broadly economic issues, specifically Brexit's impact on international trade, British businesses, the UK economy and public finances, the public's verdict is overwhelmingly negative. 57%, 64%, 65% and 58% respectively. To be blunt, these numbers shouldn't really be surprising when you consider that during the referendum campaign, Brexit was billed as an opportunity to transform the UK's prospects, free up money to spend on public services, and sign our own trade deals around the world that would boost British businesses. However, the Office for Budget Responsibility, or OBR, forecasts that, relative to remaining in the EU, the UK's post-Brexit trading relationship with the EU will, in the long run, reduce the UK economy's potential productivity by 4%. And the volume of UK import and exports by 15%. The OBR also says that new trade deals with non-EU countries will not have a material impact, because the deals concluded so far either replicate deals that the UK already benefited from as an EU member state, or do not have a material impact on its forecast. While service exports have done unexpectedly well since leaving, Brexit has hurt the UK's trade in goods, with smaller businesses in particular struggling with so-called non-tariff barriers, such as customs checks and paperwork. Similarly, on immigration, another key issue during the referendum, Brexit has not delivered what many who voted for it may have been expecting, and 52% think Brexit had a negative impact on immigration levels, while just 6% think it's had a positive impact. Brexit was sold as a way for the UK to take control of its borders and control immigration to bring net migration down below 100,000, as per the Tory government's target. At the time of the referendum, net migration was around 300,000 people per year, and while leaving the EU did precede a big drop in EU migration, soaring non-EU immigration has sent net migration to a record 906,000 in the year to June 2023, and then 728,000 in the year to June 2024. Now, we've obviously only mentioned a few areas there, but the headline is that by a considerable margin, the UK public thinks Brexit has not been a success, and polling suggests that a majority would vote to rejoin, as well as showing support for other closer arrangements like rejoining the single market or the customs union. However, it does at times feel like the Westminster consensus that Brexit is untouchable has hardly changed, despite the public's evolving view. So, will there be a political shift anytime soon? Well, the Labour government has promised a reset in UK-EU relations, aiming for deeper ties. However, they have consistently ruled out rejoining the EU, single market or customs union, or returning to free movement. Given these repeated statements, and the fact that this was all set out in their manifesto, it's hard to imagine Labour budging on this issue, at least in their current term. Things like striking a youth mobility deal, the Security Pact, and joining the Pan-Euro-Mediterranean Convention could, however, all form part of Labour's EU reset. For now, it's the Liberal Democrats who are trying to push the political needle on Brexit, with their leader Ed Davey calling on Keir Starmer to negotiate a new customs union deal with the EU. The question is, if Brexit continues to poll as poorly as it currently does, it may only be a matter of time before other parties are forced to consider their own positions. That's not the end of this story though, with 2025 already shaping up to be a rather busy year for news. In fact, there's so much going on that we don't have time to cover it all. Just in America, there's everything from the question of whether Trump's becoming an imperial president to America's wild history of territorial expansion to questioning if the US is actually an oligarchy. All of these things could lead you to say, WTF USA, which is, appropriately, also the name of the series I'm literally telling you about right now. WTF USA takes a tongue-in-cheek look at the weirder side of US politics, unpacking what Trump's really up to and why Trump's kind of weird decisions could end up being incredibly impactful. WTF USA is released every other Friday only on Nebula, the streaming service we co-own with a bunch of your favorite creators. And those creators also make a ton of other exclusive Nebula content, including real-life law series War Room. That's the show where every month the Real Life Law team breaks down all of the ongoing wars and conflicts around the world to keep you up to date and informed on what's happening and why, which, in an increasingly complex world, could prove to be a very helpful summary. It's not just original content either. You can also watch every normal TLDR video on Nebula ad-free, and in some instances before they land on YouTube. If you're not a member already, click on the link in the description to get 40% off, which brings the price down to just $36 a year, or $3 a month. That's a real steal considering all of the original content on the platform, and the fact that signing up using our link directly funds the channel and allows us to make more content going forward. So thanks for your support, and please do join us over on Nebula.